Folks, welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our weekly workshop Traders Talk. My host, Josh Levitan here. And for all of our students in chat right now, got Brian, Tim, Lawrence, Margaret, Kathleen, got John, Irving, Carlos, full house here. Got Charles, Barbara, got Pete, got Chris, got Ravi, got Brad, got all of our students and members alike. If you're joining us inside our live trading room, my appreciation goes out to you each and every day. And all of our students and members otherwise, though, on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc. That being at Cyber Trading U, that'll pop up probably on the lower left here in just a second. I'll be typing that in here for you just right now. So one-man gig right now today, right? Traders Talk, our weekly workshop. This is where we'll have the chance to go over any trades and questions that were sent in previously. My email address, I'll post that as well for all of us on YouTube, for all of us inside our live trading room at least. That being josh@ctutrading.com. Post that right here for you. Any questions that you got each and every Tuesday morning, we have the chance to jump on this workshop to go over them. Now, there's a lot to talk about, right? There is too much to talk about for this week, obviously, with what's happening, not just within the stock market, but around the world. I had a couple questions that came in about, what do you think is going to happen with Israel and Iran, how that's going to affect the stock market. We will get to that. All right. We will get to that in just a bit. The first answer that I give to you is I don't know bleep about bleep. I don't know anything as much as anyone else here does, right? We can't predict, but we could react. That's what I'll start with. And we'll get to more of a detailed answer coming up in just a bit. But for as much as that's going on, we are still in earnings season, aren't we? So, actually this morning, PLTR reported their quarterly earnings. Actually, it was from the after hours last night, right? So it looks like they had pretty good earnings. They're moving up right now. I was calling this trade out just before, all from the morning session. We were both Fausto and myself, who was on our morning watch list, who was on our pre-market watch list. It's a very well-known company at this point. But at that, just a moment ago, myself and Barbara were following this trade off of 26.50. So let's basically go over this trade in full from head to toe, from Z to A. That's how we like to do it here in Traders Talk, from Z to A, because we like to reverse engineer all these trades here. It's not just kind of telling you what happened and that's it. Like, oh, you could have bought this stock here, could have ran it up. That's easy to say in hindsight. But how could you actually prepare for a move like PLTR? Well, that's what we cover here each and every Tuesday. So, just to mention, PLTR had an earnings beat. They see fiscal year 24 revenue better than the estimate. Revenue beat, earnings beat, customer count of 41% driven by strength in U.S. commercial, blah, blah, blah. Right? Our girl Kathy Wood, very happy, I'm very sure, right? But just to mention, had a great reaction in the after hours. That's literally where I begin. We short here at CTU, we will short stocks, but truth be told, much like I'd say most of us, if not all of us, I think we look innately more for a buying opportunity, innately from birth of trading and learning how to follow the stock market. You try and buy low, sell high, right? So when I saw the pop in the after hours, innately I'm thinking, okay, that's cool. Let's look for a trade tomorrow morning. Let's look for a good buying opportunity at some point. If this had crappy earnings and it tanked, if it looked great on the chart, yeah, I'd look for a short, but not as much as I would be interested in that bounce and that buying opportunity. So right away, the pop leads me to become interested in it. What also allows me to become interested in it is the fact that this stock has a good spread, has good order book, tight spread. And this is what we see each and every day. Right now, it's pulling back a little bit here. So I just want to see what happens coming up on the next candle or so. Is live here we're talking. But basically, that's the first thing that drew my attention to this trade. It's a stock we've done well before on in the past because it's tradable. And it had good earnings. And not only that, it was trending up in pre-market prior to 8 o'clock. It was trending up prior to the market opening up. So when a stock is trending up, right, I'm going to ask Kathleen this. I'm going to ask Leda this, Brad, Michael, all of our students here in chat right now in our trading room, that is, what happens when a stock is trending up proactively? What are we seeing more of? Selling pressure, or are we seeing more buying pressure as a stock is trending up, right? What do we got, folks? Yeah, Chris says that's why we follow the money. Absolutely. And, hey, if this is trending up, you'd assume that people are buying it. So you want to follow that, right? Just kind of, adding on top of what Chris said there. So that was my reason for being more focused on this trade out the gate this morning. But the better question is, like where are the levels? Where are the big levels in which this stock is trading from? Where are the iceberg orders? Where are they on level 3 and level 4? For a non-inexpensive stock, I don't want to say this is expensive by any means. It's not. Maybe to some people it can be. This is just more of like a mid-level stock for me price range wise. What common set of price levels would you feel most confident in seeing these iceberg orders at? These big round iceberg orders, the larger orders at on the bid and the ask. What common set of price levels would you normally feel most comfortable trading off of? Maybe for a less expensive stock, you'd possibly say like 50-cent levels, like every 50 pennies. For something a little more expensive than a cheap stock, we'll say, more mid-level within our price range here, probably just whole numbers. I am more focused innately on whole numbers here to begin. And I'll show you because in pre-market, whoops, I don't want to give away my answers. So pre-market trading, you could see some icebergs around here, but as you zoom out, you got 30. And then as you go deeper into the pre-market trading here, you got 29, 28. So more so than anything, you're focused on the whole number levels as far as where you have those icebergs. For a cheaper stock, 50-cent levels, like $5 stock, $3 stock, $1 stock. Even looking back on the after hours last night, let's see what happened here. Really zoom in, I guess. 29, there's 41,000 shares, 42,000 shares there. At $30, obviously big one up top. So that's where I'm more starting off on the whole number levels. That's kind of what my focal point will be to begin with. So, hey, that would be like $26. That would be $27 coming up top here. The more it goes up, 28, etc. Right? So when I'm plotting for this chart here this morning, that's the first thing that I'm looking at. Hey, it's like we always talk about in class in phase 2 and phase 3, looking for these iceberg orders. But the way I teach it myself is, hey, let's say if you get lost in the woods, what's the old adage? You look up, you find the North Star, you find your way home, right? This is our North Star in trading, iceberg orders, and especially, to begin the morning, of course, Bookmap and level 3, that will be your source of confirmation. But you want to start with that. You want to focus on 27, 28, 29, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's what we're doing here to begin. We're starting off on that. That's all we're doing. And actually, you know what? Let me peel this back one more time because I got an idea. I'm going to show you something where I messed up this morning. Because listen, it's easy to look at this graph and be like, oh, what if I bought right here and I held on the whole time? For anyone that has that mindset with trading, they're probably not making money. Sorry, hate to be honest. That's the reality of it. Like where I call myself Captain Hindsight, A, I'm self-deprecating with my humor. B, I'm joking. Like this whole point of Traders Talk is to go back in hindsight. But for Grant, for Brad, for Margaret, Laureen, by the way, big shout out to Laureen, one of the nicest human beings I've probably ever met in my entire life. I'll just say that for right now, Laureen. So big shout out to you. But Danny and Joyce, probably all of us here are the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. Just to mention to say that, these are traders that know because each and every week we cover the same material. We go from Z to A on all of these stocks and we go through the same patterns. That's the key. It's the same patterns that are playing out on different stocks on different days at different times. So the key is, can you be more aware of these patterns to happen beforehand? And the answer is yes, you can be. And it's all starting from pre-market hours. So that's where ultimately I'll tell you where I messed up this morning because it would be easy to tell you I bought it right here. But no, I mean, hey, normally reversal time is at 10:30. So for as much as PLTR dropped at first and broke below 27, well, I'd expect this to be resistance coming up. But it is to say, though, that for as much as this is dropping, I'm not looking for a bounce right away. We got time in accordance to the cyber clock, around 10:15, around 10:30 Eastern time, I'd feel more comfortable. Real time on the microphone with Fausto in the trading room, I was saying that. And I could have taken this from 26. I didn't, though, because I was more privy to the cyber clock. So more often than not, in situations like this, even with good news, even if it's trending up earlier, more often than not, you tend to see the 10:15, 10:30 bounce. I've lost money on this exact setup before. So that's where I'll tell you, like, oh, it moved up without me to begin. All right, what's our next level? That's my key. What's the next level for this stock to try and move over? And as of right now, it looks to be 27, but that's where we'll come back to bookmap here. And I'll show you basically what I was describing to Barbara just a moment ago on our call just before. So, yep, you got an iceberg here at 26. You got resistance at 28, 27, you assume. Okay, let's try and hone in right here. Let's kind of have it from this view right here, because this is from like 6 a.m., the 3.5 hours right before the market opened up. All right, looking at CVP, this shows you like what volume got filled at what prices. So it seems like right around here, right around this area, maybe there seems to be some like, more volume, I guess, that was traded and filled just from the consolidation compared to other price levels. Now, it's not by a lot, not by a big margin, though. This is not by a wide margin. It's not a big spike. So it doesn't help me out that much. But I will say, if there's an area that I would focus on for high volume, I guess we'll start with 2650, and you know what, let's actually go 2640 just for right now, right, Barbara? Because when you look at the CVP in the delta column here, it's like actually a lot of red. It's a lot of red right there. What do we nickname red? What's the nickname that we give red in class, in time and sales? We talk about this with tape reading, talk about it here in Traders Talk every week, right? Each and every soon to be Monday morning, we'll say. But what's the nickname that we normally give red? Selling, right? So there seems to be a lot of selling at 2640, and like really we'll say like the area of 2650. This area just seems like there's a lot of selling. All right, well, what happened when the market opened up? Well, we know, Captain Hindsight, it dropped. Not only that, but very quickly it broke below support, right? So, it was at that point I knew pretty quickly, like if it's not even going to hold support here within the first 5 minutes or right away after, then you got to wait. You got to wait. That's the first thing. But then otherwise, this support level, once it gets broken through from Margaret and Grant and Laureen and Charles and Joyce and all of us here, support initially becomes what after, right? What are we expecting this support to become after? Resistance. So it was resistance to a great degree for about like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. It was having a damn tough time trying to launch off of this area. All right. So later on, it started to pop, right? It popped right here. I was on my call with Barbara at this point. We're looking all around, by the way. Me and Barbara, we're on an active trading session, basically with her and with, a number of students, I will say, like Chris or Joyce, a number of students I feel confident to trade with live. They know what to look for, and I feel confident in that. We'll go together. There was a lot moving, folks. This freaking LUMN was going. I was making money on SGMO. I think I still might be. Did I get stopped out on the second half of this? I get stopped out on this. Yeah, I got stopped out on the second half of this. I moved my stop up, so they took me out break even on the second half. That's all right. It happens. Point being, folks, there's a lot moving around right now. So on PLTR, we saw this pop over this resistance line, this area, this resistance area. Okay, well, here's the thought. And again, I'll probably field more questions on this exact conversation in class or coaching. If you have one-on-one coaching, if you're a part of our coaching program, schedule with me for later on this week or next. We'll talk more about it there. For all of that red, we nickname that selling, right? Like all of us correctly said to me, Joyce, Grant, Danny, Barbara, Margaret, all of us here in chat, correct. All of the red before, well, that was selling. That's what we nickname it at first. At first. Well, when this begins to pop and all of a sudden it's moving off of this red, it's moving off of this selling, doesn't it make you ask why? If there was so much selling pressure there, wouldn't this just continue to drop off of this level and keep going down? So when it pops up suddenly, it leads you to ask why. Well, it leads you to do two things. A, leads you to ask why. And then B, it leads you to answer that question of why, right? Because you're not just going to ask and be puzzled. You got to say, well, wait a second. That red, we kind of nickname the red selling. That's the nickname that we give it. My nickname's Josh. My nickname's J Lev, Ace of Trades. My full birth nickname. My full birth name is Joshua Max Levitan, right? Well, what's the legal name for the red? What's the full at birth given name for the red? It's not selling. That's the nickname. The at birth name that we give it is on the bid. Those are orders that were broken through on the bid side, right? Once support got broken through, it was on the bid. Well, wait a second. If we're going to see this break over this area, then perhaps the buyers are going to gain control. Perhaps whoever was on the bid is going to keep this on the bid. For when this breaks over this resistance level here, this area of resistance, I want the same people to answer this one, if not more. Skip, Alan, Barbara, Joyce, Laureen, Leda, Grant. When a stock breaks above resistance and it moves off of it, resistance becomes what? Right there. Bingo. And that's exactly where we jumped in on this trade. Did 2 entries, 500 shares total, and 26.50 is my price. But right now we're on the way up to the next resistance, right? You want to know how to trade a stock off of earnings? It's 2 things. Just like Fausto says each and every day, and he does it in his like free webinars. Follow the money. That's the first thing. B, and this actually comes before following the money because you have to be there before the market opens. You got to prep your levels. You got to be available in the morning to say, hey, where are my icebergs? So, you got to follow the money and you got to be there on time to do it because, hey, if you get to your desk and it's 9:15 in the morning, 9:20 in the morning, and you're just waking up, you're wiping the crust out of your eyes, you could be in for a rude awakening. What if this could be a good buying level here? Jump in, impulsively, right? So for as many moves I miss, there's plenty of moves that just fall right into my freaking lap, like the easiest thing out there. But the only reason that happens is because of my level of preparation. If I'm not prepared, this is all for naught. It's as simple as that. So, right now at 27, this might be a good area to take the money out at. But now let's, think about it here. What's the market up to right now? All right, we're pulling back down a little bit. Looks like a rounded top. We had to pull back at some point because for as much as we took off here, well, we didn't really reverse at 10:30 in the morning, did we? We tried to, but then it shot up again. So this could be the beginnings of this pullback, of this reversal, area here. Wouldn't hurt to take the money out at 27, right? Just to, take a quick 50 center. It's on a good trend though. So I want to see what happens, at least if it could break over 27. What I'm going to do is run the risk and see if it can pop 27 and go from there. But, this is just one trade that we had from earlier today. In fact, I know that actually more people, just because it moved better in the morning, moved better earlier today. What was it? The ATNM, had a nasty drop, but man, this thing had a pretty good start. I know Fausto was head on about this to begin the morning. It popped to begin. It was a stock from yesterday that made a pretty good move. So, I want to cover this one as well, basically run the same thing and go through, why this stock essentially made the exact move that it made. I got PLTR on my other screen here, just so you know. All right. So for a cheaper stock like this, a couple things. A, this wasn't on our morning watch list because it was flat in pre-market. There was no evidence of this popping until it started to pop. So thankfully, Fausto was very quick to call this out within the first 1 to 2 minutes. We typically wait the first 5, right? We typically wait the first 5 minutes before we look to jump into anything. So at this point, all right, it's not as much time as pre-market. It's not as much time as if we had from 9 to 9:30. We only got a few minutes to decide what's what here in the sequence, right? Give me a quick second. Really quick, make sure I'm good. All right, all of us here in chat, could everyone here just hear me? Make sure my internet didn't freaking go out right now. Looks like my book map may be glitching out right here. Yeah, my book map's crashing on me right now. That's what's happening. All right, so it looks like we're good on the internet. Everyone can hear me, see me, all that. Yeah, it just looks like book map's giving me a little bit of an issue right now with loading up right now. Probably because I have too much shit on this thing. But all right, well, let's just say this. I was going to get to this anyway. I'll probably load back up in a moment. But for ATNM, right away, I'll focus more on my whole number levels. So that's the key. Right away, $3. Right away after that, $4. And since this is a cheaper stock, You could even say the 50-cent levels in between. So, 350 after that, then $4 perhaps. So that's what I would start off on. Now, let's see if I could show this here, though, because, yeah, my heat map here is like all sorts of whacked out right now. I don't know what happened. All right, I might need to restart my heat map here. That's fine, but basically, I'll reload it. I'm going to show you this anyway. Market opened up. First 5 minutes, this took off. We're not trading within the first 5 minutes. We know that. But what we should know is where our big levels are. I was going to show, and I think it would have it here evidently, like 290. That was a pretty strong CVP level pre-market, within this time period here after the first 5 minutes. So I guess once it broke 290, you could have taken the trade. But more so than that, it's really the whole number level at 3. It tested it here where it broke over it and pulled back. All right, well, hey, you know what? The fact that it actually nipped above it, at least there's proactive buying interest there. If it didn't test 3, if it doesn't break over 3, then there's no buying interest. There's no evidence of a potential pop after. So I actually want this to test 3, just like it happened here. You see it pop and drop. And then the more times it tests this level, especially in a smaller time frame, I'd feel more bullish. I'd feel better about this pop. So I didn't take this trade myself, but this played out pretty similar to how we take any trade here where, again, first test, best test, where resistance held pretty nicely. And then once it rebroke it, it led to a pretty good move. So, it's just at that point, what time? That's at like 9:50 in the morning. My book map's loading up right now, as you can see. Give me a quick second here, folks. It's loading back up. I'll get everything back up and running. But yeah, this popped at 9:57 in the morning. It was that trade. So you still have time. It's not 10:15. It's not 10:30 in the morning. There's plenty of action to take on this in terms of potentially seeing the reversal around 10:15, 10:30. I think this may have topped off a little sooner than that, 10:05. But you still had a lot of room to realize a run, right? It popped up, 35, 40 cents from there. Here we go. All right, this was quick at least. Yeah, you could see shortly afterwards right here, big volume. It wasn't 290. It was 284, 283. So, that's a pretty good spike on the CVP column. That's something I'd more focus on is like, well, clearly there's a lot of volume filled there compared to other prices. So the more it could stab over this area here, 284, 283 it is, that's what could lead to a run. And then your next level from there was $3. That was pretty much it. Right here, pop, resistance became support here, pop, moved up. Now you'd want resistance here to flip into support, but when it shakes back down as quickly as it does, the quicker it shakes down to the level, it's not as good of a feel, especially if it's sooner than 10:15, 10:30. Reversal time is a rule that we focus on as an abstract rule of thumb. More often than not, stocks will reverse around this time frame. Not all stocks. Some stocks reverse later than 10:15, 10:30. So, you know what? I'd still rather be more safe than sorry. I'd still rather take my money and run. But then it's even for this reason, furthermore, why we need to do that because, this ended up topping off when? 10:06? Certainly not 10:15. You wait till 10:15, this thing is down in the, down in the dirt. So really quick, let me just jump back to PLTR. Yes, kind of pulled back a small bit here. It's still holding support for right now. I'm running a small risk with hanging in this trade. If the markets pull back altogether, it's going to be tough for this stock to swim upstream, but it's still not making lower lows here. So I'm going to run a risk of just hanging on. I have a good entry in with that. Just to say good entries do afford you the chance to try and realize a better trend over time, or at least to see a longer trend play out rather. So I'm going to hang into this trade for a little bit. All right. So if anyone has any questions so far on PLTR or that last trade, the ATNM, let me know. PLTR goes right back up there as we saw that. The other one I wanted to just briefly touch on, what happened here? Everything that we expected. That's what happened. So LUMN, right? This had a hell of a pop earlier here. Actually, this is a trade that I clearly missed before. Just on with Barbara, we were on PLTR, we were on SGMO. Can't trade every stock under the sun, right? So this LUMN was a morning mover. It popped in pre-market, popped after the open, that is. And, there's plenty of opportunity to take on this trade altogether. But actually, there was a very clean move that was very takeable right after 10:30. It was just a pop over this $4.20, retesting, especially in a more short time frame here. Pop when a stock breaks through a big level, we should be getting a big move shortly after. Easy to say, right? That's Captain Hindsight. But that's typically what you look for. That's what you start with. That's the first thing in your head when this happens. So when it starts to make that exact move, should you be that surprised? Nah, not really. So that's that. But really here, let's start off with pre-market. This had some good resistance at $4, 32,000 share sell order out there. Didn't get tested until the market opened up. So you want to wait a little bit on that as well. Shook down at first. Really, your opening print was also right at that price too, right at $4. This is what? Oh, wow. This isn't even 171,000. You know what this is? Look at the size. That's not 171,000. That's 1.7 million shares. Now, for a cheaper stock, I still get like, all right, for a cheap stock, probably should be on larger size, but it's still not that often that we see 1.7 million shares in one dot, one ball, obviously one transaction on the time and sales, that is. But that's a key level now if it wasn't already, right? So with that, it ended up beginning to make this move back up. Even here, you'd still expect a little turbulence because it's testing it for the first time in what, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, maybe that could be. Ended up making the move over time, right? It flipped resistance into support and then eventually made that better move. So, $4 was your first key level here, but then at that point, like 420, it built up pretty nice. You had some good buying that came in off of this area. That was your next big buying area, basically. Lined up pretty nicely with the delta column there that I have. And just on the more times it tests in a smaller time frame, ran pretty well. So, that was another run, right? There was plenty of action to take today. Now, if you're from a swing trading background, long-term background, well, hey, you're looking for a discounted price within the market anyway. And if you've been around the market for a long time, you know that history often repeats itself. We're going to stay on that exact catchphrase coming up. That will be my segue to talk about Israel and Iran and at least long-term charting with the S&P. History has a tendency to repeat itself. So you know what? Even as a long-term trader, you should have the mindset of, well, let's look for a discount here. Let's see if this stock is ready for a bounce for as much as we dropped yesterday, right? And then overnight from the weekend, that is. So that's the first mindset. But it is also to say that you might not be as jumpy to like proactively trade this, trade that, and like be a gunslinger, because for as much as we did drop within the market, there's probably still a period of exhaustion from that drop-off period. There's probably still a period where it consolidates. If anyone here is familiar with the Wyckoff pattern, anyone here familiar with the Wyckoff, model? It's like a whole distribution accumulation pattern, basically. But I'll show it here briefly. Where we see crashes and corrections within the market. Shout out to City Traders Imperium. Sure. But stock, or you can see where you have the crash here. Well, it's a little while before you get a cleaner spring, right? This is just a basic long time model. It's been popularized for a little while now. But otherwise here, yeah, you get bounces at first, but it's a little while before you get a cleaner run where there's less exhaustion from the drop-off period and more aggressive buying to come in. So, hey, if the SPY moves up sooner rather than later, then all the more better to us. But it wouldn't shock me if there is a period where there's at least some consolidation within the market over the next day, over the next couple days. Then if we start filling gaps over time, like we were looking to do at least before this drop, then even better. I'm long-term bull. I'm looking more for a move back up, but there could just be a period where there's like a little exhaustion consolidation period. That's all I'm thinking there. So to get back to like, PLTR, get back to these other trades, well, hey, PLTR did break over 27. We're looking better now. As long as this could remain over 27, I feel good. We got to keep trading level by level, because even if the market is moving up, that doesn't guarantee for this to move up. If there's more exhaustion on this from 27, then it's only going to hold over it for so long. It's going to either break under it quick, or it's going to hold over it for as long as I possibly can, and then eventually crash. So, hey, level by level, as long as this could hold over 27 now, there is a much greater chance for us to get cleaner up towards 28. That's my game plan now on this trade, right? All right, so I want to stick with that catchphrase though, because I had a couple of emails that came in from earlier. If there's other trades you want me to go over, folks, please just let me know. At this point, you could just chat me, here in the trading room. But otherwise, I had a couple of questions that came in. One from Steven here, one of our new students, that was basically just asking. It was a longer email, so for lack of going through it all, just to mention here. What happens if Israel and Iran go to war and the U.S. intervenes? What would happen to the overall markets at that point? I tend to follow mainly just futures like ES and Q, but of course, this pertains to, what you focus on in the trading room. So that's basically what he's longer winded right there, but basically asking, what do you expect to happen out of the Israel-Iran situation, and what would happen if the U.S. steps in aggressively and escalates it to a point of World War III. Okay, a couple of things here, right? A couple of things here. Number one, I'm 32 years old. I'm turning 33 in September. I don't have as much experience life-wise compared to a lot of us that were around during World War II, that were around during the Vietnam War, that were around during the Cold War, and just so on and so forth, right? That were proactive traders during 2001, 2002, right? So that's first thing, right? You're asking the wrong guy, because there's people out there that have much better knowledge from their own experience breathing air during that time and trading the stock markets themselves compared to me. I just want everyone to know that. That's the first thing with me addressing this situation, because there are people that do value my opinion, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to give you a better answer coming up here. I'm going to give you a real substance. But the precursor to this answer is I don't know shit. That's the first thing. Secondly, what I do know is I'm a trader, right? What I focus on are two things: order flow and charts. Here with order flow, that's more of a day-by-day situation. Literally, we have to observe the order books every day. Hey, what if there's no longer that million share iceberg order as support? What if it was there for 2 weeks in a row, and all of a sudden, one given morning, that iceberg acting as support is no longer there? So it's always day by day looking at the order flow. That's for any stock, any day, any situation, any month, whatever. So don't think about war. Don't think about a huge situation geopolitically and focus on that. That's just the case with anything, right? Day by day, focus on volume. Now, where we talk about history repeating itself, well, that's where we could at least go back on at least the long-term graph. That's where we could at least go back on the S&P graph. And what I did actually coming into this week, I didn't have this email even come in before I did the research here, actually. So let's see if I still have the lines. Still got the lines here. I delete. Oh, you know what? I just freaking did it. I just clicked remove drawings. I just removed it all myself. Okay, give me a moment here, folks. I'm going to get my timeline straight here, if I'm not mistaken. Get my lines back up. But World War II. I'm going to start with World War II. That was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, September 1st or 2nd of 1939. Basically, there we'll just go with. And it ended, basically, 6 years later, in 1945. That's pretty much what we're working with there with World War II. This was the graph of the S&P during World War II, from the beginning to the end, just point blank. That's it. Let's break this down into a daily chart, though, and you'll see better. If I can go back that far on a daily graph, let's see. Yeah, I can, but look at all the spotty graph here. That's kind of odd to see, right? So it looks better on a weekly chart, looks better on a monthly chart, and let's try that. I don't think I had it set to daily when I was doing this observation. It was more on the weekly observation here. Yeah. All right, looks better on weekly still. Okay. So it was September 39 to September 45, basically this. Okay, so what's the first thing that you see with this graph in between these two lines? Well, simply put, We started off with a little drop, not much. So it's not like instantly when the war started on day one that the markets tanked. There was a period where there was a drawback, a consolidation period, and then a massive drop. Obviously, the markets flushed shortly afterwards. But really, the beginning of World War II, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was like early September of 39. So there was a period where there was like a consolidation. And then we saw the shit hit the fan, basically, for lack of better phrasing. And over time, how big of a drop did we get? That's the next thing that we'll find out here. From the beginning of World War II to the very bottom here at this point, from this starting point, this is the market altogether dropped 43%. Obviously, that's very extensive. That's a huge drop to think about in today's time. Like, imagine the market dropping 50% or 40%. Obviously, we saw it back around 2020 to a lesser degree, but man, this is pretty crazy. Granted, what happened after? You know what happened after. You see what happened after at that point, right? Ended up having a strong bounce back. And that's during the middle of the war as well. So we ended up moving back up off the bottom, a gain of 117 plus percent. And we ended up higher than we were to end the war compared to where we were to begin the war. Now, is the same going to play out here? No, I can't guarantee the same will play out here. And let's hope we don't even go to freaking war, right? That's the first thing, right? No fear mongering in this room. That's one of my first rules. It's to say at least that if, something does happen, well, let's at least be more forward thinking than just more on the edge of our seat, right? Well, if we look back here, it's at least to mention, well, you know what? Yeah, we dropped, but this created a massive buying opportunity. And it didn't create a massive buying opportunity necessarily after the war. It was during the middle of the war. So, of course, we kept seeing the markets go up more and more afterwards. But just to say, disaster does create good opportunity. And that's where, as traders, we have to be very proactive, as thinking, okay, when this situation does happen, if it happens, and, let's say if and when that happens, all right, well, where could we find support on the S&P graph? Where could we find support long term? That's more where my mind would go, if anything. I'm not thinking that just yet. Hey, obviously situations are pretty bad right now around Israel, Middle East, Iran area. But, right now, considering all things, today the market is very much up. We've recovered quite a bit from at least yesterday. There could be more to come there. But, otherwise, how much of a drawback is this really even off the all-time high? 9%, 10% drop on the S&P? When was the last time the market dropped like 9 to 10%? Well, just maybe go back here. So where you look at like drop-offs within the market, this was a 6% drop. Okay, not 9, but fair enough. It's still relatively big. Give me a second here. If you look back here on this drop that we had, just get a new one. Let's see. This was a 10 to 11% drawback back from fall of last year, right? So when you look at this drop, people like start freaking out because of everything happening, around the world, geopolitically, as we'll say. And that could lead to more of a drop off. You're absolutely correct. But let's zoom out. Let's just zoom out for a second. Let's just catch our breath here and just zoom out. I think that we're still very much in bullish territory long term. B, you know what? Hey, let's say something does happen. Let's not fearmonger. Let's not rip our hair out wondering if, what, when, how, what. Let's go back and let's just at least prepare in advance. Go back on past history. Not only that, go back during 9/11. Go back during, Vietnam War maybe. Go back, obviously, as we did with World War II. Just simply put, it shows that there's always an opportunity to try and buy. But the thing is, most of us freak out because we don't look to sell when we could and should, right? So that's where I kind of want to get to Bitcoin because we only have limited time here. And I had another couple of emails that came in just overnight here, just more on Bitcoin. And obviously with the drop off that we had over the weekend heading into yesterday, which, by the way, obviously Israel, Iran could attribute to what happened overnight and over the weekend with how much, the markets pulled back. But I think a lot of us now, and myself to begin, we learned that a lot of that drop within the market recently was off of what's called the Japanese yen carry trade. I am not going to sit here and tell you as if I know the first thing about this thing. I don't. I probably could and should do more research myself on that, but I don't want to talk out my ass. I don't know much on this yen carry trade. What I could tell you from what I've read is this. This apparently could be the, as I've been described to as the linchpin for a global margin call. Again, I don't want to fearmonger, but that's what I was, reading up on. That's all I'll tell you. So perhaps that could have more of a long-term effect, right? Hey, for any of my students here in chat, you know that I've been very bullish on the market since basically 365 days ago. Actually, when I was first wrong on the melt up and the markets pulled back at first, and then we got the melt up after, I was bullish before the melt up. I'm still bullish now. Now, I will say that my thought and the people that I follow, online and long-term macroeconomic wise, they believe at least that there will be a massive global recession, like, down the line in the next year, 2, 3, and they don't even focus more on time as they focus on targets on the S&P. So I'm looking at that. I've been believing that and kind of sipping on that for a little bit and been working out. But I definitely have the thought process of a bust, of a recession over time. I'm not letting that go, unthought of, but it is just to say at least that, long-term wise, we've been doing pretty good. Now with Bitcoin though, because obviously with anything, a more speculative asset, Bitcoin being such, would take a larger hit in something like this, where, currencies and, international markets crashed and got halted. I think the Japanese market got halted again this morning, actually to the upside this time, but, to the downside, to the upside. So with a more speculative asset like Bitcoin, at least here, what you're basically seeing is more sell-off than anything. What's interesting here is this. First thing, I don't want to go too off course here, but it is to mention. When Bitcoin dropped yesterday, BlackRock and Fidelity, Vanguard, Van Eck, all these people, they didn't sell anything. They didn't sell a single thing. That's the first thing. You can look it up. They didn't sell. There's no outflow of Bitcoin from them, not from the Bitcoin ETF. So when this all dropped, this was all people with for lack of better phrasing, and in the crypto world, it's called paper hands. For all the people with paper hands out there, they sold, and all the whales picked it all up. Now, though, with this, we ended up having a pretty big drop, and a drop larger than I was expecting. I thought that there was a case for us to see us hold like 64 area, 66 area, and just pop this like a freaking pimple and run. I'm underwater on option calls right now. Long-term option calls for like June of next year, I'm down on. I'm underwater on those by quite a bit right now. So that's first. I'm long-term though, so I'm sure that will rectify itself. We'll go back up in due time. But hey, going back in history, at least like I did with like, the S&P graph on World War II, I go back to 1939, 1946. I can't do that with Bitcoin. I can't go back to 1939 on this graph. But what I can do is go back to 2016. I can go back to 2020. I think it was the 2021, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was the 2021, if I'm not mistaken here. No, maybe it was 16. Okay, let me just do this here to begin. So every 4 years, Bitcoin has what's called its halving. So I'm just going to get this here. The Bitcoin halving dates was one in 2016, one in 2020. July 9th. Oh, that's my dad's birthday. Right there. So that was the halving in 2016. Well, obviously, Bitcoin took off pretty nicely after that point. Well, what's interesting here is that we ended up having, during this run up, a number of major drops, right? You're talking a 35% drop from top to, that dip point there. Even again here, right? It's another 30% drop. This is all during the bull market, all during the proverbial bull market, right? Because once the halving hits, that's technically like kind of the beginning. The Josh rule is you typically wait like 3 months. So that's proven from this cycle and from the 2020 cycle. So it is just to mention, even here at this point, you start to rev up, rev up, rev up. Oh, you're popping nice. Well, look what happened. This thing crashed on two separate instances, 30+%, right? So can I ask you, when we're dropping 30% right there, is that really a huge concern when we're thinking about historics, when we're thinking about cycles, and the fact that history could often repeat itself? So I'm long-term bull. I didn't buy at 49, 50,000 right here. I bought a little higher, like 52, then again at 54.5. But basically to tell you, this right here is very similar. It's actually a little less statistically. If you want to really nitpick it right there. It is less compared to these drops, right? Now, I'm pointing this out because you got a lot of people like freaking out and like, Fausto, like, you got crushed. It did. It did. Got crushed in 2016, my friends. And it only went up that much more. Went up 2,000% after. So that's that. Now, even again in 2020, here's your COVID crash. So this was all COVID. Your next halving, though, is in May of 2020, May 11th. Basically right there. So after the halving event, then what happens? Oh, shoot. Give me a second here. Make this easier on the eyes. Dropped 21%, right? Pretty extensive. Not the 30 plus, but still pretty deep. Obviously held higher lows, moved back up. And then one more. Let's just see what this was like. Probably not as big. Probably not as big. Oh, shit. Look at this. Yeah, it was as big. 31% drop back. All right. This was even larger. It just, from the naked eye, didn't look as big. But actually, look at this. 31% drop before it took off 100% higher, right? So again, just to mention, these corrections have proven to have been the case with Bitcoin historically. So I would not be freaking out just yet. I would be a buyer. I'd be freaking out about buying. How about that? I'd be freaking out about trying to buy more and more and more, expecting more of a push. Now, that's the first thing on Bitcoin. Second thing would just be, if you're looking at basic levels, like, if you just want to be really basic and simple with it, and basic is good, folks. We like basic here, KISS method, right? Keep it super simple. But you want to basically focus on Bitcoin in two different ways. Basically, every $1,000 is going to create a sense of a level, much like you would think of with iceberg orders. Like 56,000, 55,000, 57,000, et cetera, et cetera. That's the first thing. But on a more abstract level than that, even like in larger swings, Bitcoin's not moving in thousands. You're really doing like every 2,500, like 2,500. So think about like a decade level, like 50,000. Let's see if it, oh, you know what happened? This may have been the reason why my bookmap crashed before. May have been the data from Bitcoin there. I think that could be why. But basically to say 50,000, 52.5, 55, 57.5, 60,000. Those are the psychological levels that I am more focused around myself. So that's just something for you to keep in mind. Here's the actual Bitcoin graph. I guess we'll just use from TradingView. Like just earlier from yesterday and going into the market close, it had a pretty good pullback to where it basically held right above 52.5 and then bounced back up from there. 55 was the next key level. And I was telling Michael this just earlier today because it was chipping around it after. It was actually, I was a little concerned. It broke above it here. This is from last night. I'm on an hourly graph here. But resistance should become support. It should. And it did, thankfully for now. But it was chipping under it for a small margin here. And I was telling Michael, like, it was at like this point. It's like, just be careful. If Bitcoin pops all of a sudden, then you're looking great. because you got IBIT, which is the BlackRock ETF. That's the one that you want to trade. If you're not doing the crypto, then do IBIT. That's the BlackRock ETF, but it trades 100% based off of this. Not 90%, not 20%, 100, Wilt Chamberlain. So with that, thankfully, this popped back over 55,000. And once it did, I said to Michael, I'm like, okay, unless if it pops right, or I'm saying if it could pop right now, you're off on a good run. And thankfully it popped. We're looking better now. And yeah, at this stage here, we're likely going to try and make a push up towards the next area. We'll probably go with 57.5, loosely speaking. So you're going to have volume areas from Bookmap, CVP. You'll have icebergs actually showing here. Oh, that's why I got to do USDT. Do Tether. Off there. But basically, that's what I'm looking for. Basically, loosely speaking, every $2,500 will create some substance of a level. So after that, 60K, and so on and so forth. All right, folks, let me know if you have any other questions here. You got Bill on YouTube. Welcome, Bill. Join us inside our live trading room. Of course, normally he says on YouTube today, thank goodness Bitcoin dropped. Oh, he picked up some good Bitcoin over the last 24 hours, right? So I know he's rooting it on with me there. Let's see. Anyone else here in chat? Luis saying about the Fed. Some comments on that. There we go. Let's go back to PLTR. We're doing good. We're still holding over 27. So you know me. At this point right now, as long as this remains above 27, I just said it before, I'm going to play it level by level. So as long as we're remaining above this, I'm led to believe that there's a good chance for us to try and get up to 28. We'll see what happens maybe at 27.50, I guess, first. But I'm more focused around the whole number levels. That was our plan. That's what we're focused on. So unless if something pops up out of the blue, I think there's a good shot for us to hit 28 heading into the afternoon meeting. All right. So, I will say this. If you're joining us on social media right now, YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, etc., again, I appreciate you folks joining us each and every week on this. Going forward, for real this time, Mondays at 11 o'clock Eastern time, we will be doing Traders Talk, this very workshop. New start day, same time, same place, just on Mondays. Mondays at 11 o'clock Eastern going forward. Just scan the QR code coming up. It should be popped up right there. My apologies. Right there. Scan that QR code right there, popping up lower center right there. If you're interested in joining our live trading room, scan it with your phone, with your camera. I don't have my phone on me. I'm trying to be a good employee here today. So scan your phone, with your camera, at least to join us for a week-long trial inside our live trading room. I will be updating all of our students exclusively there later on today. So if you wanted to hear my thoughts on PLTR going into the afternoon, see if I'm still in this trade, what the deal is, what the game plan is, join us inside our live trading room, that is. Again, scan that QR code. We look forward to having you there. For all of our students and members alike, though, at least Grant, Luis, Brian, Brad, Joyce, and all of us otherwise, hey, hope you enjoyed. We'll be back right here later on this afternoon. Take care.